Welcome to episode 4 of Boss by Bronte. Today I'm joined by Ash Weil, who is a friend, incredible social media manager and content creator. Thank you so much for jumping on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we're going to discuss how to define yourself in the industry, find your niche, navigating studying or not studying, and the importance of personal branding. So to kick us off, do you just want to tell us a little bit about your brand, Sophia Social, and give us a run through of kind of what that looks like for you at the moment?
Yeah, Sophia Socials I feel like is a ever defining, like evolving brand. It's kind of always pivoting and changing in direction, but kind of at its core we do three things. So I specialize in video content creation, and that's sort of like my biggest thing. We then do the social media management, and we also work with small businesses on their social strategy and one-on-one sort of coaching as well. Kind of all with the aim to just simplify social media, because I think it's just can be a really complex thing. So everything I do has the intention of simplifying and streamlining the process.
Amazing. And I think that is a really big benefit of partnering with someone who understands it, because if you don't and you look at it, it's like it's so overwhelming, it's so stressful. I actually hated for that reason when social media X went around, because I was like, you're making it more stressful for people who don't know about social media.
And it's like I feel like the whole world is just this big can of worms, and it's overwhelming. And the minute you start to look behind the curtain, you're like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. But once you're actually in it, it's not that confusing. It's not that hard. And it's like I like to just emphasize that with my clients. It's like we can break it down, we'll step it through together, and it's just so much easier once you have someone guiding you through that.
100%. One thing I always say is like the only strategy that matters is the one that works for your brand.
100%.
So they're all just custom. So I love that. I love that you're focusing on simplifying it. So with your brand, I actually feel like that was a really good overview. When before we started, you were like, I don't know what to say to talk about myself.
Yeah, I think I think there's so many different like facets of what I do. It's like, how do we put this in a really nice package? But I guess that was it.
No, that was perfect. And actually with Lil as well, so a couple episodes ago, we talked on the fact that like she started out just doing organic. I also started out just doing organic, and then you kind of build it up and like offer additional things, because you do offer so many sort of different avenues. Where did that start? Did you start just doing organic management and then build that up?
Yeah, pretty much. I think my sort of entry into social media was a little bit different, but once I was in the social media world as a business, I started as organic social media management, and then sort of just kind of branched off into this little area that I enjoyed the most, which just happened to be content creation, video content creation, which is definitely my favorite element of social media, and it's the part I love creating the most. But I think it definitely came with its challenges. It wasn't really a thing at the start, like it's its own service. I think it was always just sort of included. And yeah, I kind of recognized that there was this thing. I love doing it. I recognized that people really need help in this area. Can I kind of create something that's going to fill that gap? I didn't know what that was going to look like. I think that's partly why I ended up coming to you, because I was like, I have this thing. How do I make it a business? And it kind of just took off from there.
I know. I actually fully remember us having that chat about your offerings, which I literally loved it, and I love how much you ran with that and literally have built everything that you've done. I do want to deep dive into that, but before I do, you mentioned that you have a little bit of an interesting background into getting into social media. And when I was like putting together the notes for this episode, I know we touched on it, and I was like, that is so interesting. So can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, of course. So I actually come from a background of competitive swimming. So I think 12 years of competitive swimming. And sort of through that, I guess it's known for not being a very high paying sport. And I think very early on, I may have even been like 14 years old, I just had this sort of light bulb moment where I was like, I need to like be doing more outside of sport. And I was going for sponsorships at the time. I was getting turned away. I was like,
did you say at 14?
I actually remember it sitting there at 14 and being like, oh my God, I need to like work on my social media. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I got that message or like who told me that that was a thing that needed to be done. But like it was literally such a light bulb moment for me. I was like, yeah, no, I need to do social media, but to help with sport, which is weird. But yeah, and then sort of from there kind of just started building my socials by myself, just on like my own personal page, a personal brand. And then sort of started working with brands and businesses and like ambassadorships and sponsorships, and kind of sort of built my background with social media there. And then, you know, that sort of carried me through into later in my career, and I was working with some really great brands and had a lot of financial support, a lot of support from the businesses I was working with, and then was kind of just became known as that sort of go-to person for social media. I started then contracting for a lot of the businesses I was sponsored by in their social media team. So like coming in, kind of helping them make adjustments and sort of things like that. And I think, yeah, I kind of weirdly started with experience and then backtracked into studying. But yeah, elite swimming, who would have thought that that was my avenue into social media?
No, I think that's really cool. And I loved it. I feel like everyone has such different stories that's led them into it, but it's always kind of like an organic journey. Yeah. And I have always said that with my own business, especially with the academy. Like after I sold the agency and I started building the academy, I was really like, knew kind of what I wanted to build, but was also kind of open to like what direction that took and like how it kind of built. And it sounds like that's what you did too from that initial stage.
And I think what you just said is being open to the direction it's going to take, because my original business was never going to be social media management. When I first kind of was like, okay, let's make this a business, it was going to be teaching athletes how to utilize their social media. Like that was fully the niche I was going into. I had set up the Instagram. I had like done everything for it. And I was like, yep, like I'm working with elite athletes. I want to teach them to do what I did, because that was like what my experience was in. And then, I don't know, it kind of just got to the point where I just kept working with more businesses, and that just sort of seemed like, I don't know, the area that we ended up shifting into. But it's interesting how your journey changes once you start.
Totally. And like, it's so funny you say that, because I actually did the same thing when I started. My background, which we cover in episode 1, was heavily in like the music entertainment industry. So when I first started working for myself, my initial idea was like, oh, I'll represent like artists and management companies and like events and stuff.
Yeah,
and that was like what I thought would happen. But then, yeah, you just kind of, I don't think it's about being like, whatever happens, hands in the air, like I'll just let this grow in whatever way, but it is just about being open to opportunities,
100%.
Paying attention to what you like, what you don't like, and then kind of letting that guide you through kind of the next steps, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's always great to have a goal, a sort of direction in mind, but I think there's definitely like a level of openness that needs to be. It's like you don't know what's going to happen next until you take the next step. And so it's just like being super aware at each step of the opportunities around you and pivoting in the direction, whatever way it comes.
100%. I love that. So from that, where you were still in the athletic space, I don't know the way to say that. Since you were in that space, when did you decide to kind of take it more seriously and set it up with like a brand name and like as a business and let that evolve in that direction?
Yeah, so I had been sort of, I guess, contracting for a couple brands for a couple years before I sort of decided to enter into my own business space. Not really sure what sort of triggered that transition, other than I think demand. And I think I just, through word of mouth and referral, and more people were just coming to me and saying, hey, like, I heard you do socials, can you help me? And I was like, oh, okay, like this was always just something I was going to do on the side because I loved it. I was passionate about it. It's something I taught myself. Like it was fun. It was literally fun. It was never meant to be a business. But I think it kind of just got to the point where I was like, hey, like maybe this is a thing that I could actually do. And then, God, I think I remember it was like the week I had COVID and I was home. I was so sick and I just set it up all in like one day. I was like, oh, I'm a business owner now. And it kind of just took off from there.
Which is the best feeling, to like look at something that you've done and be like, oh, I'm a business owner. I know. Like I'm a CEO. Okay, I love that. Amazing. So once you had that set up, was that where, because I know you've been to uni, was that when you decided to go to uni and do a bit more study?
Yeah, so kind of. I think uni was one of those things I didn't really plan for. I had previously studied about half, 3/4 of an exercise sports science business management degree, completely different direction, and I hated it. I loved what I was studying, but I just didn't see myself kind of working in that industry. And so I kind of swore off uni altogether. I was sure that I was never going to go back. And then it just so happened I had a pretty serious injury in the swimming world and sort of had to take a step back from that. And then all of a sudden had this time on my hands, and long story short, it kind of just worked out that going back to uni for that period of time while I was in the injury, it just worked. So I didn't really mean to go back to uni, but I did end up going back and doing like a short social media specific course through USC.
I was going to say, like when you first said, like, I didn't mean to go to uni, I'm like, it's not really an accidental thing.
In a sense, it kind of was. It kind of just supported where I was in sport at the moment. Like it wasn't to be like, okay, I need to get this qualification to have, like, it sort of was just like, oh, I'm injured, I have time, we may as well utilize it in the best way possible, which is such a weird thing to say about uni, but that's truly how I got back enrolled in uni.
That is so funny. So how long was that study for? 6 weeks?
No, that was it 6 months or a year?
6 months.
But like a shorter intensive course where they kind of pulled out the social media specific units and put it into one.
Yeah. And was that credited from your previous degree that you did, and that was why?
No, completely separate. Yeah, they just offer that. It's actually a new, not to plug USC, but it is actually a new sort of a diploma, certificate, something study that they offer at USC.
That's amazing because, as we know, they didn't even offer anything social media when I was there.
Yeah. Well, you actually had a interview on one of my my units that I did. Like I sat there as a workshop. I think before I even worked with you, I sat through one of your master classes. I was like, she's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I actually didn't even know that. That's so amazing. So was that because when you finished I think maybe the reason I said 6 weeks is because you had 6 weeks left to study when you reached out to me?
Quite possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. Yeah, because then we started doing coaching and stuff together. And that was when you decided you were like talking about just doing video and being like, I love video production. So what was that journey into kind of like focusing on that as a service? Because like you said, people weren't really doing that at the time.
Yeah, I don't really know how I got there for it to be a thing, but I had been working in the social media management space, and that was absolutely what I was doing. I wasn't really doing that much video content creation, but I have a history working in modeling and on photo shoots as well. And I think that's sort of more where it originated was when I was on shoots, like I was just always the one picking up the camera and like filming that BTS behind the scenes content. Again, before it was sort of the norm to do that at a photo shoot. And it was just like, I was like, it just made so much sense to me to be capturing that content in a photo shoot setting. I was like, well, you have models here, they've got your product, we're in a pretty location. I was like, okay, this is great for the brand when they launch to have that video content. Wait, this is also really great for the photographer who's actually taking the content to be able to post that behind the scenes. Wait, this is actually great for me to post like for my personal brand and to have that sort of video content there. So I was like, yeah, why aren't more people doing this? Like, this is definitely a thing that, and I just liked it. And I thought it was just so great for everyone to have that content on hand that I just sort of started doing it and being like, hey, like to the brand that I was shooting for, but like, hey, I made this reel for you. Like, you should post it when you launch type thing. And it kind of just started from there and it just built. And then sort of having the management on the side, it was like, yeah, like management is great. I know I can do it. But I was like, there's a lot of elements I don't necessarily love in it. But I'm loving this thing that I'm doing with the video. How can we sort of make that a bigger offer? Because I feel like there's so much value here and this is going to really be so beneficial to a lot of businesses. And that's sort of where we met. And I was like, hey, like I know your social media management which was the biggest help ever. But I was like, I have this thing, like, how do we structure that? Like, what does that look like? And that was like really the start of it.
I know, because I remember, and you were like, like I could reach out to photographers and I was like, put together a full proposal just for photographers, just for like weddings, like pitch to them what it would cost for you to be there for the day or for like a set amount of reels. And then, yeah, all of a sudden you're just like booked out and it was like so cool to see because like you said, it was like not that big at the time, but it was also in that perfect timing where everyone was after it, but not enough had tapped into the opportunity.
I think it was the time when there was that one wedding content creator who blew up on TikTok and she was huge and everyone was kind of like outraged that someone would hire someone to film wedding content for them. It was before that whole industry took up and I was like, I love what she's doing, but like I see this more in a business element. Like how can I come into a business, help them capture video content? Because we all know how important reels are. And honestly, people struggle with it so much. How can I help them capture that? How can we package that? Like, what does that look like? And yeah, and it very much was about reaching out and creating partnerships and creating opportunities. And definitely, I think I sent out that proposal that we worked on together to a whole heap of photographers. Some I heard back, some I didn't. And I think the best thing I did at that point was do work for free, which we're all about valuing our time and all of that stuff. But unless you have evidence to show that you know how to do what you do, you can't really get anywhere. So I think the best thing I did was actually say, hey, you have a photo shoot coming up. Can I just come along and like grab some content? Would you happy to send it to your clients? You're welcome to use it as long as you're if you're happy for me to post it on my own page. And I probably did. I couldn't even tell you how many free shoots I did, but when I look back, I could almost map out all of the free shoots I did and how that's come to fruition at some point later in my career. Every single free shoot I did has come back tenfold, whether it's in connections, whether it's in referrals, whether it's in, someone saw the content that I shot at that shoot, whether it's I networked with the photographer and got on well and then they added me to their packages, whatever that was. It was like the best thing I ever did was actually just spend the time to do the work for free to get the evidence that I knew how to show that I knew how to do what I do.
100%. I think that's super, super important, especially for the people starting out. And it doesn't all have to be free. It can be heavily discounted.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different ways to sort of structure that. But I think experience is like the most invaluable thing in social media. And without that experience, I wouldn't be where I am today.
100%. I think that it is really important, and there are a lot of people online who are like, only charge what you're worth. But when you are starting out, it's also recognizing that you can't prove your worth, you can't prove your experience, and it's not like, the way I always think about it is it's mutually beneficial. They're getting something for free. They don't know you. They weren't going to hire you in the first place because they know nothing about you, and it's not like the value to them is they get something for free, whereas the value for you is like portfolio pieces, connection, testing 100%. Your processes, testing the way you have everything set up, like showing up, meeting people, like whatever else it is. So that's a valuable partnership, I guess. Like it's
absolutely. Like invaluable, I would always say. And I think it was to the point that I think it was my mum was like, this is a business. Are you going to charge for your work? I'm like, yes, but I'm being very mindful with who I'm working with. And it is about like, I'm building my portfolio. Okay, so I've worked with this style of client before. I need someone who's doing this, or I need someone who's more in e-commerce, or like a different kind of coach, or like different photographers. And it was being really mindful about where I was putting that energy and knowing that it was going to come back to me later.
I love that. And so at what point do you think that flipped? Like you went from, you defined what you were kind of really loving and offering, you knew there was value in it, you were offering it for free. At what point do you think that flipped into all of a sudden you were in demand?
I think just it all of a sudden exploded through word of mouth. I think a couple of those course shoots that I did at the start with photographers and different brands, they just loved what I did for them. I could have never really anticipated, but they loved what I did so much, and they were posting the content and people were asking them, hey, like, where did you get this content from? Like, who did it? And then they were referring me, and it kind of just spread so organically to the point that I was almost like overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, okay, this is really a thing that people are looking for. Okay, like let's take this a little bit more seriously. Let's really establish those packages. How can we scale this? And then it kind of went from there. But it's just one of those things that was so high in demand that it kind of just worked itself out.
So amazing. And I think that is a good point, that like at the start, throwing yourself at it, the reason that that's valuable, and this is something I go through with a lot of students who are like freshly starting out and they're like, how do I get clients? And there's obviously particular structures and like activations they can do, but the biggest underlying factor of that is just throw yourself 100%. At everything, get your name out there, show up to everything. And when you have no work, like say you have one client and you want 8, all that spare time that you would be spending on those 7 other clients, you can be going out and doing work that's either free, portfolio building, cheaper, networking, whatever it is. The things that you would be doing for those clients should be dedicated to getting those clients and getting that brand out there. So it's actually a really good use of time.
100%. Even though people they're gonna have their piece, they're gonna say it's wasting your time. There is so much value that comes from it, and I think the biggest value that comes from it is confidence. You build confidence with experience, and the more experience you have, the more confident you get, and that's only going to help you in your future interactions as well. So I think that was actually the best thing that I could have done at that time.
That's incredible. I love that. So when, if we just jump back a little bit, so you went to uni, and there's 2 kind of things that stand out with you. One of them is that you initially launched your business off your personal brand, and I talk about this quite a lot in terms of really aligning your personal brand and your name with social media. And the other thing is the fact that you went to university, which is a question that I get all the time. So if we start with the uni, what do you think about, like a question I always get from students is, should they go to uni? Do they have to go to uni to be a social media manager? What is the benefit of going to uni? Or can they just do a course like my course, or, you know, learn from mentors? What is your sort of take on that after being someone who has gone to uni for social media specifically and now works in the space?
I think it really depends what you want to do. I think, and I see pros and cons both ways, so we'll go through it. I think for me, there's been very few times in which being able to say, I went to uni has been beneficial. Like you will always run into clients who have that really traditional mindset, and then like, well, you don't know what you're doing unless you've been to uni. There's been a handful of those, and to which I've been able to say, hey, here's my piece of paper, I know what I'm doing. When in reality, I already had all of the skills before I went to uni. So it's one of those things that's like, I think experience is always going to outweigh studying. But that being said, there was a lot of value that I learned at uni. A lot of things I learned that I wouldn't have learned if I didn't go to uni. But I think if you were wanting to be a social media manager specifically, I think you would probably leave uni and still have a lot of questions and not really know how to set up a business or how to set up the packages and the things that you need to do. I think, yeah, uni is sort of that more broader. So you'd almost be leaving uni with a HECS debt and needing to invest in another course to kind of really walk you through the process. I think if you were wanting to work more in a corporate scene, yes, a degree is going to be super beneficial. They probably won't even let you through the door without that, which, again, could argue about all day. But, again, it just really depends what you want to do. If you want to get into the freelance space, if you want to get into your own business, you can absolutely do without a degree if you have some really solid experience behind you. So it's just about deciding, hey, what path do I want to take and what's the best way to get there? For some people, uni's going to be great. That's going to teach them everything they need to know. For some people, well, I left uni and was kind of like, okay, I feel like I know things, but I don't know enough about the back end, the systems, the processings. How do I deal with clients? How do I do that? Like, it was more broader picture. So I felt that I still needed the help even after leaving uni.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think that it's about recognizing that the education is important.
Yeah.
You could be great at editing videos on like a tool and like that's great, but it is important to understand social strategy and marketing tactics. Yeah. But where you get that education, you can sort of decide on what like avenue you're getting that from, whether that's uni or whether that's online courses, as long as you are actively chasing that out.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think social media, just being the nature of it's so hands-on. You need to learn through experience. The only way you're going to learn so many things in social media is actually by having clients and testing and seeing what works and then adapting. There's only a point at which you can learn in the classroom, and the rest of it you're sort of on your own to figure out. So it's kind of like, do you want to go to uni and then have to figure it out, or just figure it out by yourself anyways? So yeah.
100%, because a lot of the things that we use every single day are changing all the time.
100%.
And that is what people are paying you for as well, is your skill set to be able to stay on top of trends and stay on top of like what the latest programs are, or like what is currently happening, what people are talking about online. And that is a skill that you need. I do agree though. So I did public relations at uni, and while I don't think that I needed that degree for what I do now, it was a 3-year degree. If I spent 3 years learning social media tactics, I probably would have got, just as much out of that, if not more. I don't know. But one thing I do really value that I got from uni that I don't think I would have got anywhere else, which sounds similar to you, is that kind of like underlying base of like the way marketing works on like a psychological level and the history of the industry. And I think that it's probably helpful information, but I think it's more just like gave me confidence of like knowing that underlying, whether it's like essential for me to know or not, it gave me confidence kind of knowing that. And then like you said, being able to say to certain people, I have a degree. I actually hated that though when I had the agency, if I had someone come in and ask me, because I was like, it's really irrelevant.
I know, but some people get so caught up on needing that piece of paper to show your worth. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing that I struggled with, where it's like, yeah, I have this piece of paper, but I knew all of these things. I was just as capable, just as ready to go, could have done just as good of a job before I had that piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, I wish more people understood that, especially within the marketing industry or specifically social media. But I think people are learning that uni isn't the only way to do things, and are being a little bit more open to it, which is really good.
Definitely. Social media is one of those industries that people can like definitely easily put down. It's like the influencer industry. People like, oh, you just model, or like social media. It's like you just post and you get paid for it. And as we know, there's a lot more to it.
So many more layers to it. Oh my God, that triggers me unbelievably so, because it's so much more complex than just that. And I think that's one of the problems with the optics of the industry. It's like what it actually is versus what people think it is. It's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with the uni side of things, as long as you're chasing like relevant information, relevant understanding, you're focusing on your own education and skill set, the source that you get that is up to you, and 100%. It just needs to align with what you're doing. Yeah. And I do think that outside of uni, whether you're only focusing on it or you're focusing on it with a degree at hand as well, focusing on the skill sets that you want to build. So if you already had social media skills and you wanted to learn email marketing, or for instance, like you could go out and find a course that offers that. Or if you want to get really good at video editing like you are, you could go and find a course or something that 100%. Offers that side of things. Yeah. So do you think your skills in video editing came just from doing it, or do you think that there was any element to your degree?
No, definitely. I don't think that those sort of really specific skills were taught at uni. I think, again, it's those more sort of like broader overarching things, but you're not necessarily being like, okay, and this is how you video edit it and that sort of thing. 100% just from experience, 100% from doing my own research, YouTube courses, like just sort of consuming as much knowledge as I possibly could. I think the biggest thing the best way I learn is actually just taking a step back, sitting in your like consumer shoes and being like, okay, why do I like this video? What is it about this video that caught my attention? Oh, that's really interesting. They did it this way at the start. I've noticed this video start. Okay, I'm going to adapt that and try it myself. And so it's like really just taking a step back and analyze. And I think for broader social media, it's analyzing why you yourself like something and then being like, okay, what is this teaching me? How can I adapt that and bring it into my own style?
Definitely. And I really like that you have focused on like your own responsibility as a person and as a business owner and someone who people are hiring you to have a certain skill set, and you've really taken that on. You haven't been like, oh, well, I've done a degree, so I should know enough. I'm just going to launch a business and offer it. You've been like, okay, cool. Great degree, got a lot of really base information. What are the skill gaps and what are the things I still need to learn to offer this to a really high level? And I absolutely love that, because I do think that, unfortunately, I love the younger gen, but I do think that there's definitely, I've seen evidence of it where they can sort of tend to just like throw their hands in the air and be like, oh, well, I've done all I can in this space. So really taking on that responsibility of, this is my business and this is my brand and my offering and my clients, and I need to work on my skills and understanding in that space to make sure that it's the highest level and I can charge to the highest degree confidently and deliver on that.
Yeah, and I think you want to be the best at what you do, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for your clients. So continuously finding ways to educate yourself and upskill yourself is going to speak to that. You need to be always on the ball, especially in the social media world, which is so fast-paced and ever-changing. You need to be on it. You need to be searching for new information and really staying in the loop.
Absolutely. And then the other thing that I found really interesting that we touched on at the start was that your entire sort of space in social media and where you launched into this brand was all off the back of your, building your personal brand, which started more in the like athletic space. But what do you think you would say to people if they're kind of not sure if they should even put their face behind their brand, or if they should set up like a logo or an Instagram for their business account? What do you think the real value is in having a personal brand aligned with your business?
Yeah, and look, this is a debate that's always going on. You have the people arguing you don't have to have your face in it, like you can get by, you can do it, which you can. But I think there is so much value in actually having a face behind the business. Again, you sit back and you put yourself in the consumer shoes. What kind of content do I like taking in the most? Hey, it's actually when there's a face in front of the camera. It's actually when there's, the founders of the brand or, that founder style content. That's actually how I've discovered some of my favorite brands. It's not actually on their business pages, but it's on the founders page. And it's just like that indirect sort of content. It doesn't feel salesy. It feels natural. It feels like you're coming along for the journey. I think, at least in my opinion, always having the face behind the brand is going to be a winner. I think there's just so much benefit. I think there's so many people who do what we all do. You are the point of difference. And if you're not in it, how are you going to show that? There's a number of people who work with me, for my personality, for the way I do things. If that wasn't in the content that I created, how are you going to sell that?
Yeah, I love that you said that it's, that is your biggest point of difference, and it is. And I agree. When people ask me if they should be the face of the brand, I have the exact same response. I'm like, you don't need to. It's not essential. You can still succeed without it, but it's going to take you much longer and it's going to be much harder. You've got to be much more creative. You've probably got to invest a lot more to build that same level of trust. Whereas just showing up and being yourself, it's beneficial in that way, but it's also beneficial, like you said, you attract the right people. You attract people you actually want to hang out with.
And you like the quality of client. You attract the kind of client you want to be with because they're drawn to you. They're drawn to your personality. And so I work with really fun clients because that's like the whole brand that I've built. It's around being like, professional, getting the job done, but also really fun. And I want to work with people who are on the same wavelength. And so that's been huge for me to kind of have that personal brand come through so that I can keep working with the people I want to work with.
Amazing. So where you are at the moment, what does that look like day to day? Like what kind of clients are you working with? How much of that is content? How much of that is social media? Run us through what Sophia Social is right now.
Yeah, again, it really comes in waves. It depends on what I'm feeling. We kind of pivot. We're super open to a whole lot of things. At the moment, I'm solely based in the content creation space. I haven't been working with any management clients. It's kind of just the way things have evolved. I do also work with businesses in a one-to-one capacity, which is so helping them with their social strategy, but kind of more from a coaching lens, because that's the part that I really like, is teaching people how to do it. I think there's a really empowering element about knowing how to do something yourself. So it's well, yes, I could take on your socials and run them for you. I think it's really beneficial for business owners to be really aware on how to do that themselves. So I work with them one-on-one to help them simplify the process, put in steps that just make it so easy and so attainable for them to do themselves. So that's the sort of one side. And then the other side is predominantly the content creation. So whether that's out in the field with businesses actually filming content, or then, the weeks at home editing, which there's definitely, still trying to find a really good balance of that. But I think a lot of it was figuring out, hey, what do I actually like more? I like being around people. How do I shift that to creating services that's going to allow me to be out with people? And that's where the content creation sort of kind of became a bigger thing for me, because I love management, I don't love sitting at home by myself, and I found management to be quite isolating. So it's like, okay, let's pivot. How can we work with more people? What collaborations, what partnerships can we set up? Which is sort of in the space I am now. So there's probably a day or two a week I'm working for one specific client in their offices, which I'm loving. I'm super collaborative that way. I'm, subcontracting for an agency. Like, there are so many different avenues that I'm working in. Some of them are as Sophia Socials. Some of them are sort of like whitelisting for other organizations. But I think I just love variety, and I love keeping it different and interesting, and every week looks different. And I love that for me.
That's amazing. So what do you think was the key moment then that you decided to go full in on this service niche? Because I talk about the fact that niches can be like industry or service or a million other things, but obviously you went from, you're in the social media space, you're in marketing, but your focus area is that content creation for brands and behind the scenes. At what point did you kind of look at everything and be like, okay, management, not feeling it entirely, just like for who you are as a person, content, huge opportunity. People know you as a content creator. I know that 100% in the local area. At what moment did you kind of pull the trigger and be like, okay, I'm going full in on this niche?
Yeah, I think there wasn't necessarily like a specific moment, but I feel like I was just feeling so much resistance to management. It's like, there's this thing, I really want to do it. I have clients, I'm doing it, but I just felt resistance to doing it. And that's sort of hard to explain, but I almost didn't want to show up in that space and to do it. And I was like, hey, I've built this business on something I love. Something's feeling sticky, something's not working. Okay, what is it? How can we pivot? How can we change that? Okay, if management is feeling a little bit isolating, a little bit at home, working alone, what direction can we go in that's going to fulfill like my needs as a human? Because at the end of the day, like, yes, it's a business, but it's also about my life. And it's like, I like people. Content creation, I love that side more. How can we sort of expand on that? And then it kind of just happened naturally. Again, the more I did, the more referrals I got, the more people reaching out. And it's sort of just like built into its like little world of itself. Definitely still open to management clients if the right one comes along, but it's like, I can afford to be really picky with it. And there I am, like, really picky with management. There's a certain type of client that I would want to work with, and it's kind of just given me the freedom to be able to be that picky, which everyone knows at the start you can't really afford to be that picky. So it's been nice to have that flexibility.
No, I love that. I literally was going to say the word freedom is like, if you're working for someone, there is always going to be elements to your role that you don't love. And I love this about working for yourself, especially in this space, that you can look at it and be like, okay, what do I actually not love here? What can I pull out of that? And when you were saying resistance, I resonate so hard, because lately what that's been for me is writing copy.
Yeah.
I actually am like fairly good at writing copy for my brand, but I hate it. And so like, if I ever have like a blog to write or like an email, I will sit on it for like a week, and like every time I go to do it, I'll be like, better make a coffee, or like better do this. And that's the resistance. It's like, you just don't want to do it.
My biggest resistance is like, we love Canva, but I hate designing in Canva. I spend hours on just like, and it drives me insane. And it's like, I love video content. Send me content and I will edit it and I'll get it up and I'll get like amazing content for you. But the minute I'm working with brands that are quite like graphic focused, it's not my areas of expertise. Like, I don't have a background in graphic design. I don't love doing it. That's where I kind of find the resistance. Overall strategy, love. So many elements of it I love, but I was like, oh, I'm just getting so stuck on that one area. Hey, let's just go where it feels easy and kind of just flow in that direction.
100%. Lily said the exact same thing. She was like, I don't like design. So she, is partnered with a contractor to like outsource that element. Yeah. She's like, I've set it up in a way that she can do that.
Yes.
It makes it more enjoyable, because that is the goal. We want to feel good every day in our business. Mm-hmm. So if we notice that obviously the majority of people listening to this, at least based on my predictions, are going to be people either starting out in social media management, looking to grow, or are sort of like in that like, pre-quitting their job, thinking about it looks really appealing. If you were to pinpoint a couple of like the biggest misunderstandings about social media management in the space and working for yourself, what do you think they would be?
I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about the industry as a whole, but I feel like that's more from like a client perspective. But for someone who is going to be entering into the industry, I think it's easy to look at a lot of people like you, like me, and sort of see us all posting and be like, oh my God, they're living these amazing lives and they're traveling in the freedom and they're at the beach in the middle of the day and they're like at a coffee shop, and there's like, which it is, and that is the freedom element that we all buy into and why we create our own businesses. But I think you have to be prepared to put in the hard yards, and it is isolating at times and it is hard, and there are times that you're going to want to cry, and it's just like everything is really overwhelming. But I think the thing that I would say to someone about to enter the industry is just talk to other people in the industry. Every time I've had a chat with you, I've had a chat with Lily, anyone who's working in the industry, you just feel so much less alone. You're like, oh, you're having those problems too? Hey, like I don't feel alone anymore. And I think just keeping in touch with other people, because I think the social media industry at times can feel a little bit secretive. Like you don't really know what other people are doing. Hey, like what are your packages? What are your pricing? Like what does your workflow look like? People are so like secretive about it. And I think it's about remembering that there is so much room for everyone. There is an abundance of clients out there. Everyone needs social media, that it's not about competition. It's about collaboration. And it's like, so look for that collaboration wherever you can, because it does make the journey so much easier.
So many good points. 100%. I also, Lily mentioned the exact same thing when it came to community and connection. It is so about like talking about the same things and realizing everyone's facing the same issues. Like Instagram reaches down and like clients are all arguing about it, or like whatever it is. And if you can talk to other people in the space about it, it just makes you feel supported. The other thing that I love you said is definitely when it comes to launching a business, like, and I struggle with this to a degree when I'm talking about it in my own content, where I'm like, work from cute cafes and like work from the beach. Like you said, I never want to paint a picture that's really unrealistic, because while that is all 100% true, as we've said, I think two things come to mind. Firstly, like you can get to that, but you have to sacrifice at the start. You have got to push yourself to build a brand and build your business to a point that can happen. And I actually had a woman comment on my post the other day. I did some post that was like, make money as a social media manager. I can't remember what it was. Some woman commented being like, oh, because being an entrepreneur is so easy. And I replied and was like, I'm not saying it's easy. It can be really difficult, but I'm saying like when you put in the effort, this is possible. And I think that's what everything that I talk about comes back to. Like for me, I love working. I thrive at work. I really enjoy my, days working. I think what it comes down to is though, if I wanted to take 2 days off a week, or I wanted to take a day off a week, or I wanted to go overseas for a month, or whatever it is that I wanted to do, I have the freedom to be able to set it up to do that. It's not that I do that every week. It's not that every single day it hits lunchtime and I'm on the beach, but it's about having the possibility. And if I'm like, I want to set up a business that I only work 10 hours a week in, if that's my goal, I can structure everything and work towards that and put in the hard yards now so that is what I'm working towards. And I think that's what the messaging really is, whereas people get that confused as like, oh, I'm just going to launch a business and all of a sudden I'm going to be like sipping a cocktail and like be a boss. And it's like, there is hard yards and I don't ever want to breeze over that.
I think it's about choose your hard. It's going to be hard either way. You can either work really hard in a business, in an organization that you kind of hate, you grow resentful towards, you don't have the flexibility, you don't have the freedom, or you choose your hard, which is setting up a business, because it is hard. It's undeniable. It's really hard. But again, it kind of comes back to, well, what's important to you in life? Like for both of us, like it is that freedom, it's that flexibility, it's the ability to take time off if we wanted to, if we needed to travel, to do all these things. And it's like, yes, you can do that with another job, but again, it's choosing your own hard. And it's like, it's not the path for everyone. It's not suited to everyone. But again, as hard as it is, I 100% recommend it for the flexibility and the freedom that it's given me.
Totally. And I also think that one narrative I don't love at the moment is that to be, winning in life and to be killing it and like for people to celebrate you in your career, you have to have a business. And I actually think that being an amazing employee and being someone amazing part of a team and building a vision is a really, really important role. Yeah. It's just I'm talking to the people that want to build a business. It's not that, anyone is any less worthy in their career, but I just am speaking directly to the people that are really craving building that brand and having that freedom and having that flexibility. So I think that's amazing points. So sort of summarizing that, I guess, what would you say to a social media manager who is wanting to sort of launch at the moment? Like, what advice would you give them? What areas do you think are really important to focus on when they are just starting to ease into it, or they are really starting to look for that growth?
Yeah, I think a number of things. I think one, experience, get out there. You just have to get out there, get going, and the ball really just starts rolling once you start, but you have to put your foot in the game. So I think definitely that. I think on the back of that, there's a whole piece of it is a bit of a mindset thing. You know, there is going to be 101 reasons why you shouldn't do it. And there's going to be 101 reasons why everyone shouldn't do something. And I think it's about just making a decision and going for it and really just committing to it and just going for it. I think that's the biggest thing that I struggled with. And I think we've spoken about this before, whereas like setting up my business Instagram, I think to this day was like one of the hardest things I did in business, because it was that big initial step that it was like, okay, I'm a real business. This is a real thing that's happening. That was hard. And once I did that first step, everything really just started to flow. Like, yes, hiccups and things go sideways in between, but you really just got to take that first step.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're so right. It's everyone always struggles with the like putting themselves out there. And I think that's just self-confidence and feeling really vulnerable. I almost feel like when you announce that you have a business, it feels like, I don't know, like you're standing on like a podium saying to everyone like, hey guys, I'm going to try something, like hope it goes well. And you're standing up there, and if it doesn't go well, you feel like they're all going to watch you fail.
So scary.
It's not that big.
I know, but at the same time, and that's like definitely the narrative that I had, like, and I'm kind of like, I have this like personal brand, but I still don't necessarily like share a lot of my business stuff. And in a sense, I think that's like, we all get stuck in the mindset where it's like, oh my God, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? But it's kind of like, you've got to take the steps.
100%. And I also think of it as like, I feel like I've said 100% like 50,000 times in this, by the way. You didn't say slay once, and I said 100%.
We've leashed the Gen Z in me. It's fine, guys. We'll end with a slay somewhere, I'm sure.
What was I saying? Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think that everyone is so invested in their own lives, and I hate the idea that say that someone listening to this is like, I want to start a social media business, and what's holding them back is other people seeing them do that. It's like in 10 years time, if you're, you know, miserable because you never took that leap, or maybe you're happy, but you're like, oh my gosh, what would have happened if I did that? And, you know, I really wish that I took that risk. And it's like, what held you back was literally some random people on social media that you probably
aren't going to be relevant 10 years down the line. It's
don't even
crazy.
know.
I know, it's crazy. And that's definitely was a big piece for me. And I think one of the biggest pieces across the board in business when I started versus now is that imposter syndrome. And I think it creeps in at so many levels in business. And I think that's probably, if I could go back and say that to myself, it's like everyone's going through this. It's just one of those things that it's like at every level, you kind of have that imposter syndrome creep in. And one of the biggest things that I've done to kind of combat that was like, I actually have a note in my app that's like, evidence you know how to do what you do. And every time I have a little win, every time I have really good client feedback, anytime you have that like boss bitch feeling where like, oh, I know what I'm doing, I'm on the world,
this.
like I take a little note of it, I date it, I stamp it with the time. And then anytime when I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm doing, I can't believe people trust me with their businesses, and you kind of have that downward spiral, which is inevitable. We all have those like imposter syndrome moments. I go back to that note and I'm like, oh my God, evidence I know how to do what I do. That was me. I'm still that same person. Hey, I'm okay. Everything's good. Like, it's going to work out.
I love that so much. I think that is literally the best advice for us to wrap this up on, because I think, like, I don't do that, but I'm now going to do that.
I think it's so great. Yeah.
We all have days where we're like, I should not be here. I'm a fraud. What am I doing?
I think fraud, literally, oh gosh, it's the worst feeling, but we all do it. And I think even the people who you deem to be ahead of you in business have those thoughts too. So it's like, we're all in it together.
Yeah. We 100% are all in it together. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining. I think this has been such a valuable episode. I really appreciate you jumping in and telling us a bit about your story, your clients, and giving us some of the really big lessons that you've learnt over your career. The next episode is actually the final episode of this season, and I'm going into how to charge more than $500 as a social media manager, because this is one of the really key issues that I see in a lot of beginner social managers and those who are just getting into the industry. Thanks guys for tuning in.